Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So, Hare Krishna, welcome everyone to the 6th lesson of the hermeneutics course. My name is Krishna Kshetra Swami, and I will be facilitating this lesson with help from my friends and with help from all of you, Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis. And I want to thank Urmila Devi for this opportunity to participate. It's always a learning experience for me. I'm seeing a few familiar devotees, but there are others, many whom I don't know. So I'm going to enter the world of Shakti Bindu, or PowerPoint. I understand that you have completed lesson number 5 on the subject of putting principles and qualities into action by employing hermeneutic tools. So today's lesson number 6 has to do with doubts and uncertainty. It says doubts and uncertainty among devotees, to distinguish from doubts and uncertainty among those whom we may be reaching out to, persons of all sorts. So the emphasis is on our own practice, our own communities. So we can start with some Mangala Charana. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gyanan Janashalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Svapadantikam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we begin with a couple of verses, which I believe you have in your course book. A couple of sort of meditational questions, really. Etan me sangshayam Krishna chetum arhasya sheshata twadanya sangshayasya cheta na hupapadyate. Arjuna says to Lord Krishna, "This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt." And from the Bhagavatam, Parikshit Maharaj, Aptakamo yarupati kritavan vijagupsitam kim abhipraya etanna sangshayam chindhi suvrata. O faithful upholder of vows, please destroy our doubt by explaining to us what purpose the self-satisfied Lord of the Yadus had in mind when he behaved so contemptibly. This question comes near the end of the Rasa Lila, the final chapter of the 5 chapters of the Rasa Lila. So there's a core question to this lesson, and it's a kind of what to do question. What to do? What do we do when it is hard to agree or hard to find an answer or an understanding that is really satisfying, satisfying either for ourselves or for others? So as a what to do question, we're looking for a method, but I want to say that, as you may have hopefully understood by now from previous lessons, this is not what in English, in America in any case, they used to call paint by number. This is not a paint by number process. There is a procedure. We understand, we examine and reflect on qualities and principles, and then we apply appropriate tools. Yes, all of that is there, and yet it's not that we can necessarily expect the box, the Jack in the Box answer to come up, the Gita in a box, or how was it? Jack in the Box Gita. But we may ask ourselves before we get into a process, why is it that understanding may elude us? So this becomes actually part of the self-examination process. Possibly there are inadequacies in our own qualities, in our own sadhana, in our own motives, in our willingness to change, in our spiritual qualifications in general, our adhikar for understanding. It could be that we are going through the process, the hermeneutic process as it's described in this course, but we might be using the wrong tools or not the best tools for the purpose. So we may have to re-examine which tools we're using for the task. It could be that we are making an assumption which is not appropriate for the situation. And that assumption is that there's a right answer, or there's one answer that everyone agrees on. Regarding right answers, I've just been reading some passages from Srila Sanatana Goswami's Brihat Vaishnava Toshani commentary on the 10th canto. And he has repeatedly in any one given commentary of one verse, he will suggest numerous alternatives for understanding a verse or for understanding a particular word or phrase. Another possible problem could be a fear of plurality of views. And we might even fear a plurality of views in what we're calling the hermeneutic boundary, and I'll say something about that very soon. It could be that we are impatient. We want everything yesterday, and we want to be able to feel, I understand everything. It could be because we feel threatened by not feeling the control of the sense of understanding. Another possibility could be in the area of what's called cognitive dissonance. Here's a Shastric statement, or here's a set of statements, which all sounds very good, but I have different experience. Just start with descriptions of the cosmos, the universe, in the 5th canto of Bhagavatam. How does it relate to our experience? So no doubt there can be other reasons for understanding eluding us, but this gives us at least some idea. Yes, so then we come to the idea of hermeneutics as establishing boundaries. It may be, and maybe this is a general rule, that we cannot come up with an absolute, simple understanding of things from Shastra, from sadhu, from gurus, from sadhus and guru or gurus. But we may aim for getting something like a hermeneutic boundary, a boundary within which acceptable understandings can be found, outside of which they would be unacceptable. So I'm giving one example here, that meanings derived must lead to a vision for increase of service to Krishna, not a decrease of service. So that would be kind of a simple, straightforward boundary that we can imagine. It's also a kind of criteria. We can question the understanding that we have with respect to this criteria, which is also a kind of boundary. Yeah, so as I mentioned in the beginning, here we're focusing mainly on ourselves, individually or collectively in our communities. And communities take, of course, different forms. Within our society, it may be within a family, it can be within a temple, communities online, and of course, a special characteristic of ISKCON is that it is a global mission. And so certain things we are concerned about with this consideration in mind. We want to have understanding which is somehow applicable for everyone in the wider community. So the process, as we've seen, is about paying attention to principles, of which we have 24 principles identified, paying attention also to qualities. But I've selected somewhat arbitrarily, I think it's 6 of the qualities, sorry, not the qualities, 6 of the principles that may be especially relevant. One could certainly apply other principles, perhaps all of the principles, but just for the sake of our lesson, I selected, first of all, the one which hopefully you read the explanation for. I wrote something, and also Hari Parshad wrote something. So number 14 of the 24, insights emerge through apt dialogue, through mediation, resolution, reconciliation of paradox, apparent contradiction, and multiple views. I could pause and elaborate on each of these, but I want to sort of run through them, and then we can proceed with other points. The 15th principle is that Shastra mercifully reciprocates with those who study it and compassionately reach out to others. Implied is that a person who engages with Shastra has some faith in Shastra, and perhaps we all have this experience that Shastra becomes luminous to us when we are engaged with it in a serious way, with a right attitude. The 16th principle, the meaning of Shastra is directly revealed to one with full faith in Guru, Shastra, and Krishna. So sometimes we speak of Shastra in an inclusive way as including Guru and Sadhu, Sadhu, Shastra, Guru, Vakya. And sometimes we consider Shastra as that which is written in texts. We're accustomed to seeing texts which are printed. However, Shastra can take other forms. It can be orally heard Shastra. In fact, that's really the Vedic tradition. The early Vedic tradition was that one was hearing. And so we always have this understanding of the emphasis being on hearing. But the meaning of Shastra being directly revealed to one with full faith in Guru, Shastra, and Krishna is a conviction that we want to cultivate, certainly. Number 17, by purifying the senses, bhakti removes the conditioning that clouds and distorts perception. Yes, we understand, as Srila Prabhupada would say about seeing God. What is your qualification to see God? First, there must be purification. And we understand this means purification of the senses. Rishikena Rishikesha Sevanam Bhaktiruchate. Then, as a result, what happens? Bhakti removes the conditioning, which is clouding our perceptions, our minds. And of course, mind is identified as one of the senses. So when the clouds are dispersed, then we see things as they are. Number 18, realization requires virtue. The Sanskrit word for virtue is actually guna. And we usually think of gunas as the three gunas, which we want to overcome. But the word can also mean virtue. Realization requires virtue, personal transformation, and the assimilation of knowledge by experience. Assimilation, we may or may not be familiar with this classical Vedantic terminology. Well, of course, Shravanam, but then there's Mananam, and then there's Nididhyasanam. This is the procedure that's given in standard Vedantic culture discourse. First, there is hearing, then there is Mananam, reflecting on, and then Nididhyasanam has a sense of assimilation, or I like to say digestion. One can actually take and draw energy from the nourishment of what one has heard and reflected on. And this is knowledge assimilated by experience. And we understand what is experience. Specifically, it's the experience of service. And that's why we understand one cannot really understand Shastra unless one serves. And then finally, the highest truth aims at the welfare of all. Oh, I wanted to back up to 18 and just recall that one of the 6 qualities that we want to cultivate for successful culture of hermeneutics is openness to change and transformation. So we have in 18, realization requires virtue, personal transformation, and the assimilation of knowledge. So transformation, or transubstantiation, perhaps, is we want to be ready for it. So we may be coming to Shastra with certain presuppositions, and if those are not helpful for realization, for transformation, then we want to be able to confront that and be ready for change. Okay, then we go on to tools. And again, I've selected a few. I think I found 6 or maybe more. Yeah, 8 maybe. So Shastric statements can be understood in terms of tattva, rasa, or both. This is a common stumbling block for devotees because one is probably looking at a particular statement or a case in terms of one or the other and not grasping that the other of these two may be involved or may be better set aside. So I might want to amend this, tattva or rasa or both. Maybe that's something we should put in the notes for revising our work. Yes, it may be either or both. And often this point makes everything clear when we understand this distinction. A second tool, number 10, is which text or texts provide a higher level of authority. This is technically called Shastra Taratamya, hierarchy of texts. There is hierarchy. This is recognized by the acharyas, and this can be quite important for understanding whether or not something is important or relevant for us. Determining this, I should say, also is typically the task of senior Vaishnavas, of the guru, of sadhus. Number 23, consider one's own cultural and individual perspectives, along with one's life experiences. I think this is hugely important. We don't come to Krishna consciousness with a clean slate. We don't walk in the door of the temple and leave all of our luggage behind. In fact, we may discover luggage that we didn't know we had as we engage in the process of Krishna consciousness. We may surprise ourselves that the cultural baggage is a kind of negative term, but the cultural resources also that we come with. Number 28, understanding requires jiva daya, compassion for the jivas. If we are thinking otherwise, then we may be very much missing the point. Number 29, prayer, surrender, and waiting for revelation. Tate nukampan susamikshamano Unjana evatma kritam vipakam. Waiting patiently and expectantly is the idea of that prayer. Oh, yes, I had this underlining feature. I forgot to use this. Okay. Then, let's see if this works. Yes. 30, purification and immersion, hearing, meditation, applying, and praying. This is very much like the previous one, just bringing in the idea of purification as a result of this hearing and meditating. And immersion, the notion of immersion, we often use we have the ocean of the nectar of devotion. We want to immerse ourselves. And to enter into that ocean is wanted, not that we are simply standing on the side, not that we are simply licking the jar of honey. The next one, 31, is repetition, repeated study for personal transformation. This calls attention to what has, I think, very appropriately been called religious reading, or we might want to say devotional reading, which is that we're not reading just once, we're reading once and then again and then again and again throughout our lives. We read 12 cantos of Bhagavatam, we start again with Canto 1. And each time we read, there's something more. There's more enrichment, deeper understanding for everything that we read or hear. 32, explain with the right motives and correct reasons. One's own spiritual transformation is what's at issue, of course. And so this means looking at our own motives and having reasons which are aligned with our own spiritual realization. We want to be real in spiritual life. And I like this one, number 33, choose the most merciful meaning. There can be different ways of understanding a text, some of which may be, let us say, less merciful. But the followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are pursuing the path of being most merciful, or we may want to say followers of Nityananda Prabhu. So, well, then, broadly speaking, I just wanted to remind us of Lord Narayan's instruction to Lord Brahma, which is that we should constantly and in all circumstances search for the truth. Etavadeva jigyasa tattva jigyasunatmana anvaya vyatarekaviyam yatsyat sarvatra sarvada. Not that we think at some point, now I've figured it out. Now I've got it. Now, just to throw a wrench into the conversation, I couldn't resist to include this quote from Samuel Beckett. Don't look for meaning in the words, listen to the silence. Silence says. And this reminded me of Lord Krishna's statement in Bhagavad Gita, Monam Chaivasmi Guhyanam, of secrets, of confidentialities. I am Mona, I am silence. Okay, this is what I wanted to present just for now as introductory comments. Where do we want to go from here? Are we okay with time, Armila Devi?
Yeah, we're doing great with time. If you wanted to have we don't need to go into our explorations for another, like 20 minutes. If you want to have some open questions and discussion, this would be a great time.
Okay. Yes, let's open. Let's see if anyone has something you want to maybe comment or a question. Yes, please. You have put it so well. Just the fact that you have expressed this, I think, is purifying for all of us. Yes, everything just makes perfect sense according to Shastra, as we hear it from the great Vaishnavas when they speak, and then the event is over and we go back to our ashram, and the clouds gather around us. And it comes, as you also pointed out, it can come in the form of this kind of dissonance with our experience. And you also put it nicely that we put a lot of energy into trying to bring our cognition into harmony rather than dissonance. And I think that's a huge topic. It's the whole process that we do. We're trying, the general principle is we're trying to practice to see everything through the lens, through the eyes of Shastra, Shastra Chakshu. That is our aim. So if we're clear on the aim, that is certainly a major accomplishment. And a second point I would make is that it's also a process in which we're asking ourselves, is there something I should adjust in my practice, in my way of acting, in my ways of thinking? And if so, how can I go about doing that? What is it that needs to be done? A third point I would also say is cognitive dissonance is perhaps becomes kind of second nature for us as devotees, especially perhaps living as we do in this modern age, where so much of what we hear about as being, traditional ways of doing things, traditional ways of relating amongst people and so on, we just don't see. So much has been changed by modernity, as they call it, and so we live with a high dose of cognitive dissonance, and in a certain sense, we may not be comfortable with that, but we need to just allow it to be there and be sort of as an ongoing project to work on it. As you said, it can be a lot of, we take a lot of energy to do that, but what else can we do? That's our job. That's a necessity that we find in spiritual life. Now, someone may say, therefore, better I don't hear Shastra. And then I won't have any cognitive dissonance. And I will just chant Hare Krishna. Yes, Prabhupada said you can just chant Hare Krishna. That's also all right. So these are some thoughts. It's hard for me to elaborate much on because that's what I'm most weak in myself. The word is, the key word is daya, compassion. So to actually have compassion, that's what, if I can sort of hide behind Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he says, Kabe habe bolo se dinamar. Kabe jive doya, hoibe udoy. When will that day be mine that I will, in a spirit of compassion for all living entities, take up this message, this order, Sri Agyataha, Charane, what is it? Charane Tomar. I will take this up and spread this prachar, karane prachar, forgetting the line. So kabe have bolo, that's to have the aspiration. Again, that's 50%, and to integrate that aspiration into our understanding. In other words, our understanding of Shastra is not meant to be just for our intellectual gratification. I remember this is something Radhikaraman Prabhu explained once in a lecture. I think you'll be hearing him. You already have, and you will again in your next lecture. Accumulating knowledge which we are not using is not healthy. Just accumulating, I know this and I know that and I know the other thing is not healthy. If there is, on the other hand, an understanding, I'm learning this, I'm gathering this, or I'm bringing together this understanding, I'm solidifying, clarifying my understanding so that I can share it with others, so that I can be an instrument to illuminating others, then that's a good thing. So as a tool, if we think about tools, the general question or the form, most of the tools as you go through them, most of them you'll see are in the form of a question. And so in this particular case, one can raise the question, am I understanding this, or is it possible to understand this, whatever it is, in such a way that it's going to be beneficial for others? That's how I would put it.
I could add something to that if you would like.
Please.
I'm going to our supplementary materials 217, page 217. So those of you who have that handy, and I'm just going to share my screen here. So in all cases, with everything in hermeneutics, we have in the supplementary materials extensive evidences that these things come from the Vedas and from our Vaishnava practice and explanation. So this section was particularly written by our SEC member, Judah Karma Prabhu. And I really like that we start off with saying that if we're offending other devotees, then we're not going to be able to understand Shastra. And here we give the method for employing the tool. And basically that this tool should always be employed with whatever we're trying to understand. That we're endeavoring to be kind to others, especially those who've done harm for ourselves. And I like here that if some statements are both controversial and difficult, one may particularly evaluate one's kindness towards those who hold views that oppose one's own. And doing this would help us to practice vada and samvada instead of jalpa and vitanda, that we're kind to those who disagree with us. And we have explanations here. Really nice one from Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Those who think that devotion to God and kindness to living entities are different to each other and act accordingly in their life will not be able to follow any devotional culture. Their attempt is only a semblance of devotion. And we have a lot of quotes here, especially as I say by Judah Karma Prabhu. So this is something that for any of the tools or principles or qualities that we have some more questions about. I know the supplementary material is 284 pages. So I know it's very voluminous, but you can use it in an encyclopedia type fashion. It's not meant to be a book that you just sit down and read cover to cover, but that you can go through and say, oh, I'd like to learn more about this. I'd like to learn more about that, and go through and find the particular tool or principle that you want to learn more about.
Yes, thank you. Well, as you pointed out, I think this is precisely one of the aims of this course, is to help to change the culture, to not to reduce or take away from the idea that there is absolute truth, but to change the culture of how we talk about how we talk about the absolute truth in ways which are more attractive, I would say. This is certainly one of the aims of this course. So that's a bigger topic also. Taking our qualities that we consider, the 6 qualities. One is just a discerning search for the truth. And I think here the key word is discerning. It's not about just grabbing a few quotes and shooting them at someone. There's more to it. In fact, this is something I've come to appreciate myself, and perhaps all of you over the years. So the more that we hear and learn from Shastra, the more nuanced we appreciate that it is. Because we are looking at more and more. Actually, they speak in the philosophical literature. There's a whole area called philosophical hermeneutics, and they speak of the hermeneutics circle. And the hermeneutics circle, as I understand it, is sometimes the word horizon is used, that the more you know in a wider field of something, the more you understand, which comes around to your starting point. What you know helps you to understand what you don't know, and then what you didn't know helps you to better understand what you already thought you know, and the circle is widening. And to this, I would point out something I always found helpful when I first read it. Sri Krishna is the supreme absolute truth. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also wrote one time, he is the supreme relative truth. He is so perfect in all respects that he is also perfect in relative respects. It's nice. It's a good question. It's not static, it's ecstatic. Actually, the word Brahman, one understanding of the word, which we usually think of it as this non-moving, impersonal. Actually, Brahman comes from a verbal root, which means to expand. And so the absolute truth is, another word that might be used is dynamic. It's not static, it's dynamic. And we understand, of course, the highest truth is the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, who is never alone, who is always together with his associates, exchanging ecstatic and dynamic devotional exchanges of love. And that is perpetually going on. So Lord Krishna's rasa dance is going on as we speak. You know, so the absolute truth, the ultimate truth, it's not static, it's ecstatic. And it's not static, it's dynamic. And this points back to ourselves, that we, as persons, have a dynamic relation with the Lord. And what we're learning is, or relearning, we're learning how to engage in that dynamic relationship. Hare Krishna. Do you want to add to that something, Urmila Devi?
I think you put it very well, but since you asked me, because God is a person and not an object, and an ever-expanding person, therefore understandings of him are going to differ according to different persons. Like it said that the form of the Lord Kapila says, Lord Kapila, that Krishna appears in the form in which he's worshipped. And when Krishna married the 16,100 wives, each of them saw a slightly different form according to how they appreciated him. And Sanatana Goswami says, and when all the Vishnus appear before Lord Brahma in the Brahma Vimohan Leela, that God has unlimited qualities and each jiva likes a particular quality of God. So the fact that our understandings differ and change and deepen, to me, is strong evidence that God is a person. If one doesn't want one understanding to change and deepen, then one should just merge into the Brahman, where everything is not like that. But that's, again, to me, this is strong evidence that God is a person, and person has mystery. In fact, without mystery, there's no fun to a personal relationship. There was some analysis in romantic relationships that once the mystery is gone, the relationship dies. We always like finding out new things about ourselves. That's why people like to, look at astrology and palmistry and even about themselves. And so Krishna is always expanding. Krishna likes the mystery of learning more about us. He enjoys the unfolding relationship with us. And I just see this as part of rasa and part of love, that things are ecstatic and things are dynamic and things are unfolding. And there's always some more mystery, like Radharani says, oh, who is that boy? I've never seen him before. And Lalita says, oh, you've seen him many times. No, somebody new.
Yat avadi mama chaita Krishna padaravinde nava rasa damadudyatam rantumasid. There is ever new rasa in the spiritual world. It's ever new. It's there are surprises. Even for Krishna, there's surprise, or especially for Krishna. Okay, so shall we proceed with our first little exercise? Yeah, the idea now is to sort of give this a try, and I believe part of your preparation for this was to find something that you wrestle with or have wrestled with in the past. And so now the idea is just to take a few minutes And I think we're going to do this individually. And you may want to make some notes, and we may discuss about this later. But for now, we're just taking what, 10 minutes?
Yes, 10 minutes, and I'll put up a timer.
Okay, so 10 minutes to reflect and possibly make notes on this. You're choosing some difficult statement or some topic that you haven't been able to resolve, or that took years for you to resolve. And it should be something that is about, for you personally, of concern. Or it may be something having to do with ambiguity or apparent inconsistency. Okay, so you can go with that for now.
That's exploration 6.1, which is on page 56. So you can just do choice 1, or if you have time, you can do choice 1 and choice 2.
Okay, we are back. And I believe our next task follows immediately from the first, which is that we enter into groups and we identify, because, well, how many of us are there altogether? There's 40. So there's going to be, what was the plan? About 10 in each group?
10 in each group, and they'll each, in that group, they should choose a leader and a statement, and then identify the Bhakti Shastri, Thomas, and Herman, who we're going to demo them.
Yes. Yes. Bhakti. So there are going to be 3 performers within each of your groups. And one of the performers is the Bhakti Shastri, the person who has some shastric statement to present. And then we have Doubting Thomas. I call him Sangshrayatma. He's or she is expressing some doubt, some concern. And then we have Mr. or Mrs. Hermeneutics. Well, I guess it would be he. Hermeneutics. His first name is Herman. Is then going to respond. And we want to keep in mind the spirit of this discussion. Particularly, this is not debating, and it's not about coming up with quick fixes. It's more about going deeper and seeing how, with the help of the principles and the qualities and tools, could be one principle, could be one quality, one tool, how we can go deeper in reflecting on a particular statement of Shastra or a particular statement of the Acharyas. Okay, off we go.
Yani kani cha papani brahma hatyadikani cha.
Oh, that's right. We have to do a performance first. Okay,
Yes.
I forgot. Yeah, I forgot about this. Okay, so we're going to give an example of this. The 3 of us. So Rukmini Devi is Shastra Devi, And my name is Sangshayatma Das Swami. And Urmila Devi is Shastra Pramaniki Devi Das.
I'm a Herman.
A hermit.
I'm a Hermenaut.
Okay. Yes, so please go ahead, Rukmini Devi.
Yani kani cha papani brahma hatyadikani cha tani pranashyanti pradakshina pade pade. Those who circumambulate Srimati Tulsi Devi step by step destroy whatever sins they have committed, even the killing of a Brahmana.
Indeed, indeed. This is what Shastra says. Now, somewhere deep down inside, I have to confess, I wonder, is it that easy? Is it that easy to just, I mean, I've been walking around, I've been pacing around Tulsi, well, whenever I'm in temples, in the morning program, I've been happily pacing around Tulsi Devi and chanting this mantra and trying to understand how it could possibly be true.
That's a really good question. It seems kind of like hyperbole or something, I mean, almost ridiculous. You just walk around some plant, right? And your karma is gone, even if you killed a Brahmana. Wow. So let's see. Let me look at the hermeneutic path. And if I look at the hermeneutic path, let's find that here. Oh, wow. I've got to be ready for some transformation to answer this. And I think I also have to be comfortable with uncertainty and paradox. And I really like this thing about having sufficient concrete experience.
I've been having uncertainty and paradox for the last 4 decades. Go ahead.
All right. Well, there we go. But concrete experience, I think, is a real key here. Do I have some concrete experience? And I mean, I'm cheating a little bit because I knew you were going to ask this question. And so before our session today, I'm right next to Tulsi's greenhouse, and somehow or other I'm her pujari. So I chanted my morning Gayatri in her greenhouse, asking for revelation, right? And this idea of prayer and revelation. So then what I came up with from part 2 of a hermeneutical path, I looked at the 10 tenets of Gaudiya Siddhanta from page 18 in our participants handbook. And I was trying to see, is this prayer a statement of universal, eternal, and transcontextual truth? And I concluded that it's universal and eternal, but contextual. And the universal and eternal part of it is that Krishna has his superior or spiritual energy. And so Tulsi Devi's part, she's a contextualization of that because she's one of his spiritual energies. And I was also looking at, to achieve love of God, one should practice devotional service, and the living entities in the spiritual world are liberated. So this would mean if I engage in devotional service with a representative of the spiritual energy, I can also get liberated. So I understood this as a contextualization of an eternal and universal truth. All right, then I tried to figure out what principles would be most helpful to understand this. And when I'm looking at the principles, I don't know if this is going to help you or not, Thomas, but when I look, I'm sorry, I can't remember your Sanskrit name. I have
Samshayatma.
Samshayatma.
You can call me Sangshaya for short.
Samsaya, yes, Samsaya Swami. I don't know if this will help you, Samsaya Swami, but I'm looking at principles. And so scripture provides the theory and methods for its own understanding. I thought there might be something in scripture that helps us understand this. And then 17, by purifying the senses, bhakti removes the conditioning that clouds and distorts perception. I thought if I keep walking around Tulsi, that's bhakti. And by doing that, it might remove my clouds. At least it's a hope here. And 18, realization requires virtue, personal transformation, and the assimilation of knowledge by experience. What's my experience with Tulsi? All right. And then 20, wow, I really like 20. Texts are understood according to the mood and intent. And this is what segues me into the tools. Let me find, where's that page again? Oh, yes, 8 and 9, pages 8 and 9, yes. Okay, so tool number 3, seek guidance from Shastra. That relates to the principle that Shastra provides the methods for its own understanding. Okay, so I'm going to do that. And with that, I remembered, now again, I'm cheating a little bit here because I knew what this was going to be. Not all of our students are going to be able to do this. And I'm also right in the middle of teaching on Friday. So, you know, I've got a little advantage here. But I thought about this statement that Prabhupada makes in NOD 13 that I've shared. In these statements about devotional service, sometimes it may appear that the results have been overestimated, but actually there is no overestimation. Some devotees, as revealed scriptures give evidence, have immediate results by such association, although this is not possible for all. So finding that according to tool 3, and then I was also tool 13, look for a statement of equal force or meaning. So many statements in the Shastra will say just one chanting of the holy name of the Lord, or one time, you know, taking Charanamrita. I mean, I was there with Prabhupada in 75, where he said a Jamil didn't have to say Narayana, Narayana, Narayana. Once was sufficient. So there's all these other statements of equal force or meaning. Then 23, tool 23, consider one's own cultural and individual perspectives. So, you know, I'm coming from a Western culture where nobody worships plants. And, you know, that may factor into how I'm looking at these statements. Along with one's life experiences, and I do experience that by serving Tulsi, I have become free, at least of some of my anartas, right? And then I thought tool 33, choose the most merciful meaning. You know, that the most merciful meaning is, wow, Krishna will free you from even having killed a Brahmana if you just show respect to his spiritual energy and his dear devotee. Like, that was such a merciful meaning. And well, yeah, so I can end there. I had a few more, but I hope does that help at all?
It does. It's kind of a shower of Shastric hermeneutics. It'll take me a while to digest. I have more doubts about this, but I think considering the circumstance, I'll have to keep them to myself for now. But it is an ongoing project, isn't it? To dispel doubts. Meanwhile, I'm going to keep circumambulating Tulsi whenever I get opportunity. Maybe sometimes more than just 3 or 4 times. I need extra help.
Didn't you also say that we could do an empirical experiment?
Well, okay, I didn't want to bring that up, but yes. Well, it's more of a question. Would this be appropriate in relation to Shastra? Is this, you know, an unfair way to test Shastra? But I had an idea that we could convince some prison to install Tulsi in the prison, and the inmates would be advised that they're welcome to circumambulate Tulsi, and we can explain to them why this is beneficial. And then there could be some interviewing and some statistics about, what is it called, recidivism? Recidivism, that's it. Recidivism, that, you know, if that would be reduced as a result of Tulsi installation in prisons, I think then we'd really be onto something for our outreach. But that's for another lesson.
Okay. Okay, so I think we're ready for the admins to unspotlight us and start the breakout groups where you're going to plan this. Choose your 3 people and plan it.
It's an interesting exercise in how to say, becoming spontaneous, I guess. So whatever you have come up with and whatever inspiration comes to you on the moment, I think now we can begin with presentations. Do we have group numbers?
Yes, yes, we have group 1, 2, 3, and 4, and our admins are prepared to spotlight.
Yes, the time is quite short for doing these. We're just dipping our toes in, I think. So then the second group. I think our time is pretty much up, but this was very nice. Thank you. Well done, well done. If I may add a reflection, which is not directly Shastric, to this last point, this sort of, we see statements which are, we see Shastric statements which are inclusive, and we see Shastric statements which are exclusive. And I sometimes think of Shastra as being like a funnel. On the broad open end, Shastra is saying, you know, Krishna is for everyone. Everyone can become a devotee. Everyone can practice bhakti. And then as you continue understanding what is bhakti, then the channel gets narrower and narrower and narrower, and it becomes something very, very fine. So that pure devotion, then we get elaboration. What is pure devotion? The whole nectar of devotion is elaborating what is pure devotion. So when we see such a contradiction, I find it personally helpful to consider this. Is it that we are seeing two different ends, so to say, of this funnel, which Shastra is? Shastra is dynamic, and it's facilitating accessing everyone to Krishna, and at the same time, it's showing how to become completely pure, completely qualified. So I think that's, just a sort of general theme, which I found helpful to understand. Okay, sorry, we have another group. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thank you all three of you, and all four groups of three. I think the main point, in a sense, is to say that we're getting our feet wet. We're seeing a little what can be done with the help of understanding or applying principles and tools, and keeping in mind the pursuit of these qualities. Because this particular lesson is about dealing with doubt within ourselves and within group, I want to, well, first of all, quote Krishna in, I think it's one of Prabhupada's favorite verses to lecture on from Bhagavad Gita, chapter 7, verse number 1. Mayi asaktamana parta yogam yunjan madashraya asangshayang samagrangmang yata gyasasi tatshrinu. Hear from me how by practicing yoga you can know me in full, free from doubt. So it's an invitation that Krishna gives, and the key is, he says, hear from me. And so a question we can put to ourselves when we find ourselves in situations of doubting is, am I hearing from Krishna? Am I hearing from Krishna, or am I hearing from, who knows where? Krishna invites us, hear from me, and then he gives a specific result, asangshayang samagram, complete freedom from doubt. But I think there's one more point to make, and that is we should not be fearful or in anxiety about doubt. Let the doubts come. There can always be doubt, if not within ourselves, somewhere in our environment, there is doubt. There is doubt whether God exists. But that leads into the next lesson, which is outreach. I just want to also call attention to time consideration. I like the point that Srila Prabhupada makes about his own life and his own doubt that he had when he was visiting one of the Gaudiya mats where his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur, was present. And I forget which one it was, but suddenly a devotee, I guess a brahmachari, shouted out, "Shop, shop, there's a snake." And Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur heard the call, and he came out and he said, "Kill it, kill the snake." He gave that order. And Prabhupada, at that time, a relatively, as we would say, new devotee, said, he explained later, he was doubtful, he was surprised. He always thought sadhu means, ahimsa, he would not harm even a snake. But he didn't say anything. But that was his doubt. And he had that doubt with him for some years before he came upon the line in one of the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj to Nrsingadev, Modeta sadhu rapi vrischika sarpahatya, that a sadhu is happy when a snake or a scorpion is killed. When he read that, he was immediately freed from his doubt. He understood, oh, okay, this is what is in Shastra. But my point is that this was some years later that this was clarified for him. So similarly for us, we should not be in anxiety. It's a lifetime process. We're all learning all of the teachings of Shastra, and we can be patient with ourselves and at the same time apply ourselves as best as we can with the help of all of the books of Srila Prabhupada and with now some assistance from the hermeneutics program, hermeneutics course. So yes, that's what I would say. Urmila Devi, do you want to add some concluding words?
Just to let everyone know that next week we're having Gopal Hari Prabhu is going to be teaching about outreach. And then lesson 8 brings everything together. For lesson 8, you need to complete all the explorations before the class. We will not be doing those in the class. Please complete them all before the class. Lesson 8 is when we're really going to go deep and we really are going to get some, which, you know, like today's little role play was something not very deep without prep, but for lesson 8, it will be very deep with prep. So please come for that. Amaraj, did you want to end now or do you want to, I mean, anyone can leave now, our time is up. Did you want to end now or did you want to take some more time for open questions? We could keep this open maybe another 10 minutes if you want to, unless you have to go to.
Yes, my only hesitation is I think I have guests who have just come. So maybe you could take, would you be able to take questions?
We can just end for today then. I have another class coming up that I have to teach pretty soon. So
okay.
Thank you so much. I mean, this is, you've taught this several times and each time it just gets better and deeper and more.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.